Welcome back. In the last session, we looked at The Hague as a geographic center for international law. Today, we dive into the substance of that law. For centuries, international law was a club for states. If a government murdered its own people, it was considered a matter of domestic sovereignty, a tragic but legally private affair. That changed in the 20th century. We moved from the era of state immunity to the era of individual criminal responsibility. Here, we will trace the arc of international criminal law, or ICL, through the tribunals that defined it. We are traveling from the ashes of World War II to the ethnic cleansing of the 90s, and finally to the permanent halls of the ICC. The modern history of ICL begins in 1945. Following the unconditional surrender of Nazi Germany, the Allied powers faced a choice: summary execution of the leadership or a legal process. They chose the latter, establishing the International Military Tribunal, IMT, at Nuremberg to address the horrors of the Holocaust and the aggressive invasion of sovereign nations. The Nuremberg Charter defined three core crimes: crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The most significant takeaway? Article 7. It stripped away the active state defense. For the first time, a head of state could not hide behind their office. Simultaneously, the International Military Tribunal for the Far East, Tokyo Tribunal, was established to prosecute Japanese officials for atrocities across Asia. While critics called this victor's justice, and they weren't entirely wrong, these trials established the Nuremberg principles, that certain crimes are so heinous, they are the concern of all humanity, and just following orders is no defense. After Tokyo, ICL went into a Cold War-induced coma for nearly 50 years. The UN's International Law Commission drafted codes, but political deadlock prevented any real action. That changed with the atrocities of the 1990s. As the Yugoslavia Federation collapsed, the world witnessed ethnic cleansing on European soil for the first time since the Nazis. In response, the UN Security Council used its Chapter 7 powers to create the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, or ICTY. It was the first truly international tribunal. It eventually indicted Slobodan Milosevic, proving that even a sitting president was within the reach of the law. Just 1 year later, 800,000 people were murdered in 100 days during the Rwandan genocide. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda was established in Arusha, Tanzania, to prosecute those who committed the genocide. These two ad hoc or temporary tribunals did the heavy lifting for modern ICL. The ICTR's Akayasu case gave us the first conviction for genocide and recognized rape as an instrument of genocide. The ICTY refined the laws of joint criminal enterprise. They proved that international justice was possible, but they were also expensive and criticized for being too far removed from the victims. By the late 90s, the UN realized that one-size-fits-all didn't work. We entered the era of hybrid tribunals, courts that mixed international and domestic law, judges, and staff. For example, the Special Court for Sierra Leone, SCSL, triggered by a brutal civil war fueled by blood diamonds and the use of child soldiers. It is famous for prosecuting Charles Taylor, the former president of Liberia, the first time an African head of state was convicted by an internationalized court. Another, the extraordinary chambers in the courts of Cambodia, the ECCC. This was a delayed justice project. Decades after the Khmer Rouge, the killing fields of the late 70s, this court was formed to hold the surviving leadership accountable. It operated within the Cambodian court system but with international oversight. Still further, the Special Tribunal for Lebanon, or STL, was in particular unique. It wasn't triggered by a war, but by a single act of terrorism, the 2005 assassination of Prime Minister Rafik Hariri. It was the first international court to have jurisdiction over the crime of terrorism as a distinct category. Finally, the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, established more recently, 2015, to investigate crimes by the Kosovo Liberation Army. It's a hybrid court located in The Hague to ensure witness protection, illustrating how safety and local politics often dictate where justice happens. The world finally grew tired of creating a new court system every time a massacre occurred. In the 1998, 120 states signed the Rome Statute, creating the International Criminal Court, or ICC. Unlike the ICTY or ICTR, the ICC is permanent. It is not a UN organ. It is an independent, treaty-based body. It functions on the principle of complementarity. This is the most important concept that you should learn about the ICC. The ICC is a court of last resort. It only steps in if a national government is unwilling or unable to prosecute. It currently focuses on 4 crimes: genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the recently activated crime of aggression. The ICC has faced immense criticism. Some argue it focuses too heavily on Africa. Others point out that major powers like the US, Russia, and China have not joined. However, by its very existence, it creates a shadow of the law. Leaders today must factor in the possibility of a Hague warrant in a way that leaders in the 1930s never did. In summary, the history of international criminal law is a history of reaction. We haven't built these courts in times of peace. We build them in the wake of horrors. From the victor's justice of Nuremberg to the ad hoc tribunals of the 1990s, and finally the permanent structure of the ICC, the goal has remained the same: to move from a world where a general can kill thousands of people and be invited to a peace summit to a world where that general is handed an indictment. As students of ICL, and potentially international lawyers yourselves, you are the ones who will navigate these jurisdictions. Whether you are at the ICC in The Hague or a hybrid chamber in Pristina, you are part of a lineage that started with the rejection of the just following orders defense in a small German courtroom in 1945. And that effort continues today by seeking to end impunity globally.